And new developments in the story of two people who've been issued eviction notices in a Vancouver apartment building. As we first reported last week, one of them is an elderly woman with cancer who's lived in the same apartment for 4 decades. The other is a man who now tells us the landlord has made him a new offer that only adds insult to injury.
With an 11th floor view of Lost Lagoon in Stanley Park and a comfortable amount of space, after 8 years here in Suite 1101, Andrew Simmons is being evicted by Hollyburn Properties, which says it wants his unit for a resident caretaker, despite other units apparently being empty and available in the building. But now Hollyburn has made him an offer.
What he offered me was a very small 2-bedroom suite in the Dogwood, which is right across the street here, and it's on the 2nd floor overlooking the alley for higher rent than what I pay now.
Or he says take the vacant suite immediately below his at Emerald Terrace for higher rent too.
They've got plenty of other options in this building. They could put their landlord, including right below Andrew's suite, but they won't do it because they want more money from Andrew. It's just ridiculous.
Hollyburn says it is within the Residential Tenancy Act and it is trying to reach a resolution. Hollyburn proudly displayed its Better Business Bureau A+ rating, but the Better Business Bureau rejects tenant complaints.
We don't handle tenancy landlord disputes as it's not our mandate.
From what residents tell me, if Hollyburn's complaints actually had to go through the Better Business Bureau, they would get a fail for their continued attempts to force tenants out of their homes and jack up rents.
And after the NewsHour raised the issue with the BBB, Hollyburn's A+ became no rating at all, as the BBB does an internal review.
Well, potentially we can have an accreditation review of the company, meaning that we would be looking at potentially, suspending, revoking membership. But at the same time, pending a review, nothing may happen with the company if we feel that the company has responded to its complaints.
And as for 82-year-old cancer patient Lynn Stevens, who's lived in the same suite for 41 years and whose complaints started it all, Hollyburn says it hopes to have the dispute over her eviction resolved Monday.
So as we've mentioned, there are rules and regulations about what landlords and tenants can and cannot do in this province. And those rules are contained in a piece of legislation called the Residential Tenancy Act. But critics point to recent changes in the act. They say unfairly tip the balance of power to landlords. And they're calling for a return to the time when we had a rentalsman's office to arbitrate rental disputes.
Finding a place to rent in the West End is not easy. After facing a litany of no vacancy signs, when people finally do find a place to move into, they tend to stay a while. And it's these long-term residents that are the ones hurt the most by what some say are unfair rental laws in this province.
When the BC Liberals took power, a few years in, they changed the Residential Tenancy Act, made it much more easy to evict, to jack up rents, and that kind of thing. And that really is the root of this.
In 2004, the BC Liberals made some fairly sizable changes to the Residential Tenancy Act. According to the government at the time, it was a move designed to bring the balance back into the relationship between landlord and tenant. But some wonder if that balance has now been thrown out of whack.
The idea behind that act is to have a balance between, landlord and tenant, to be able to have them operate in a business environment which doesn't end up in the courts. That's why the arbitration system is not costly and why it's, the tenant who feels that they're being wronged can go and do this.
While there are some tenants in communities across BC facing issues like unfair rent hikes or what is known as renoviction, it is the West End where the problem is most acute. 80% of housing here is rental stock. Some landlords seem to be trying to push out long-term tenants.
There is a process to go and appeal those evictions to the Residential Tenancy Branch. It's a quasi-judicial process where we have mediators who basically the arbitrator will make an adjudication on it. And we've actually turned a bunch of them down.
Every so often, Rich Coleman will say, oh, we're considering something. But then when the public eye goes off the issue, he stops considering and nothing changes. So hopefully this time he's sincere.
The Tenants' Rights Coalition says there hasn't been a huge increase in the number of complaints since the act was changed. But some wonder how many people actually get around to making a complaint. Some just move out and begin the search all over again for new, affordable housing.